always an excellent destination, and I think just it makes it a better destination in terms of nearshoring.
Right. So if I gather it rightly, the overall macroeconomic impact, neither in terms of, deepening of the value proposition nor in terms of dilution of the value proposition, the impact of some of these macroeconomic and currency-related factors on the attractiveness of a destination, the impact is marginal, if I gather that correctly.
Yes,
correct.
It is marginal. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And possibly that's the reason why I don't see that as either as part of the accelerators or inhibitors here. Okay. I had another question, in terms of the various locations that you looked at, and you also spoke about the point of scale resistance concept. Which are those locations that you feel are sort of approaching, the POSR limit, amongst the European destinations, and which are the ones that have still got a lot of steam before they reach the POSR?
I think if you look at the countries in Eastern Europe, from a perspective of point of scale resistance, the countries in Eastern Europe are actually quite okay at this point. It is countries that have not really done much in terms of skill development, or countries that have a lower employability index are the ones that actually hit hit the ceiling with the POSR basically. So I think I would say the Eastern European countries are fine on the POSR, and we don't really see an issue with most of the countries in Eastern Europe for at least the next 3 years basically.
Let me just add to that, Ed. If you could see the core specializations of Eastern European countries mostly, it's not as intensive as the demands that are being asked from, let's say, an India, China, or the Philippines. Mostly it's in R&D and infrastructure services, which would require far less people as compared to contact center services. So I guess that has contributed to what Avi has just mentioned about they're far from being off the scale in terms of POSR.
Right.
But Ed, if I may add, I mean, before we ask questions from the air, is again, even though we say that we don't have an issue with POSR, and most of the jobs are transaction versus the volume and scale able customer service, but at the same time, the population in most of these countries is small, and essentially that also poses a potential problem if these countries do not make conscious effort of developing skill and increasing the employability further, and also keeping the skills in line with how the services that are coming into the country are evolving to be in sync with that. I think they could actually hit a ceiling. So, if, for example, when we say 3 years, they are fine, but let's say, for example, in a couple of years, we do not see any significant movement within the country in that direction, I think advisors like ourselves would probably be getting wary of those countries and putting up orange and red flags if that doesn't happen.
Okay, yeah, makes sense, yeah. Questions from the participants? I had one more. This was. I mean, I get this. Asked this question many times because when you talk about, say, for example, Russia, especially Russia, what is your summary statement on Russia in terms of Russia as a country being a power in this outsourcing industry? Because when you talk about, whatever framework you use for showcasing emerging economies, be it the BRIC framework or be it any of the other frameworks, Russia has sort of, not performed according to its, potential that, people expected it to have. What's your overall summary view on what could Russian companies do? What could the Russian industry do to be able to, have a bigger stake in this entire game?
I had a very brief conversation with representatives from the Russian Software Association. And one of the strengths that they actually present is the fact that they work very, very well in teams. Now, however, there is some challenge when it comes to promoting what they could actually service out of Russia. So I guess if you're going to ask me what the pain points are, on top of my list would be more focused promotions of what they could actually do, especially in the two cities that have just been featured, which is Moscow and St. Petersburg.
Right.
Avi, your thoughts?
No, yes. In fact, if you look at the country as a whole, in terms of when we talk about the emerging economies or economies on steroids, the BRIC countries, definitely Russia among the BRIC has been a disappointment in the sense that it has not really done as well as people expected it to. In fact, if you look at it, the outsourcing or the offshoring history in Russia goes back a long, long time ago. But you only have a few companies in Russia that have really been able to take the flag and move forward. And most of these companies are focused, again, on the R&D stuff. They have done a significant amount of work on the telecom side, the wireless, the security. One of the big issues that has been there from an outsourcing perspective with Russia is the fact that still we do not find a very good adherence to process. And so the process discipline in Russia is not as strong as what you see in the rest of the Eastern European countries or in places like India and Philippines. Also, the infrastructure compared to some of the other Eastern European cities, the infrastructure is not as robust and consistent across versus some of the other Eastern cities. So I think we see that Russia will continue to lag, in our view, over the next few years versus some of the other Eastern European cities.
Okay, thanks. I have a few questions from the participants here. I think Avinash touched upon this issue that most of the Eastern European countries, they have got excellent data protection and privacy rights. But the question here is, are there any IPR issues in Eastern Europe? Would you want to possibly expand or compare it with the IPR regime with some other geography? Compare Eastern Europe with some other geographies.
Right. So, I think that's the great boon of being part of the EU, is that has really been, as you adopt the principles and the cover of the EU, you really are able to take care of those issues. So I think that's one of the advantages of the Eastern European countries, is being part of the EU. They have an automatic compliance. There are few countries across the globe that have that status. For example, when you look at even South America, Chile is one country that has equivalence and an acceptance from EU. Now that kind of acceptance really is not there in many of the more popular offshore destinations, basically. So I don't see an issue with the IPR at all with Eastern European countries.
Okay.
In fact,
the next question, yeah.
In fact, Ed, because of the standardization of IPR in the European Union, they also have the capability to demand this from outsourcing locations outside of this particular block. So here in the Philippines, we're patterning our IP laws based on the standards of the European Union in order for us to service more requirements coming out of that particular region.
Right, right. Okay, thanks. I have another question coming up here. The question is, which is the best European market or best European, location for an SME IT outsourcing company? Please suggest, 1, 2, 3 options. I guess what it means is that for a smaller IT outsourcing company, which would be from a service provider point of view, which would be the best locations to look at from Europe?
Yes, I think it depends on the exact area of what that IT services company is. Again, from a smaller perspective, I think if you look at basic IT, I think some of the more common destinations like Poland, for example, and Czech Republic would be great. But if that particular mid-sized IT company is more in the telecom area, or is it more on the product services side of it, then you can even consider places like Russia as well.
Okay. The next question, I think, is a very, very pointed question. Maybe we could take it offline. Okay. Anyway, let me just reel that out. The person is asking the top 3 companies in pharma, financial services, and insurance that are utilizing Eastern Europe for IT services. Maybe we could work on that later. It is difficult to come up with very specific company names, unless Avinash would want to volunteer with some examples.
Well, I think one of the companies in pharma that does a lot of work in the Eastern European countries is Novartis. So that has a lot of presence in Eastern European countries. What was the other area, Ed, that you talked about?
Financial services and insurance.
I think financial services is something that we have seen, a significant number of processes from a financial services perspective go to Eastern Europe. And I think one of the companies that has been a very, very early adopter of putting financial services into Eastern Europe, and we are talking about end-to-end process, has been Diageo, and that Diageo has been a significant proponent of finance and accounting services.
Okay. So good. So we have some names there. Okay. What is the breakout of IT services, IT infrastructure, and BPO? I mean, if one were to give a kind of a rough percentage split of the kind of work that is delivered from Eastern European locations, what would be IT services? How much would be infrastructure related, and how much would be BPO related?
So again, I think Eastern Europe actually follows a different trend than what you would see in other countries. For example, if you look at Philippines, you would say that less than 20% of it is IT services, and rest of it is pretty much BPO, KPO, the customer service stuff. If you look at India, again, it would again be the opposite in India, where India would be about 20% in terms of the BPO stuff, and rest of it is actually IT services. So it's the other way around versus Philippines. As far as Eastern Europe is concerned, as a group of countries, I think the